God of War Ragnarok has support for 120 FPS. Update. God of War Ragnarok comes with support for 120 FPS gameplay, in addition to a few other graphics modes that target different frame rates. The single-camera shot returns. One of the most memorable aspects of God of War 2018 is its single-shot camera, which never cuts away from the game, even for its loading screens. This feature is coming back in Ragnarok, and the camera will follow our heroes in much the same way. Early previews of God of War Ragnarok have revealed the game's PlayStation 5 graphics modes, with one option impressively targeting 120 frames per second. The epic conclusion to the franchise's Norse saga will take Kratos and Atreus across the 9 realms on a truly massive adventure. While the God of War Ragnarok file size is reportedly very large, the game is also set to deliver breathtaking performance. Updated October 22, IGN reached out to Sony for some clarification on the matter. God of War Ragnarok will not have a dedicated 120 FPS gameplay option, but rather, it will support 120 Hz while trying to stay above 60 FPS. According to the IGN article, Sony said, frame rate will vary based on gameplay elements and the world location. God of War Ragnarok's graphics modes have been revealed in new previews. The game has 2 separate modes for maximum graphical quality or maximum frame rates, but players can achieve better frame rates in both modes on TVs with HDMI 2.1 support. God of War graphics modes. Favor resolution, 4K/30 FPS locked. Favor performance, 60 FPS locked. Favor resolution, high frame rate on, 4K/40 FPS locked, HDMI 2.1 required. Favor performance, high frame rate on, targeting 120 FPS, HDMI 2.1 required. God of War Ragnarok's development process has been particularly robust, even during the pandemic. No compromises were made in the story or cinematics even when development went remote, and director Cory Balrog quashed all rumors of release date delays back in June. God of War Ragnarok gets bigger and better. Reports indicate that the size of God of War Ragnarok will be considerable, which makes its 120 FPS capabilities even more impressive. Santa Monica Studio reportedly debated about whether the series' Norse saga should be a duology or trilogy, before deciding to wrap up the story in just a single game. This might suggest that God of War Ragnarok will be twice as large as its 2018 predecessor, covering both the second and third acts of Kratos and Atreus' epic Norse adventures. Despite being a massive game built for 2 console generations, God of War Ragnarok will be an experience worthy of the PlayStation 5. An HDMI 2.1 cable will allow for 40 FPS and 4K resolution, but favoring performance will instead let the game hit a smooth 120 frames per second. While PlayStation 4 users will no doubt enjoy God of War Ragnarok when it releases on November 9, PlayStation 5 players will get an amazingly optimized new-gen experience. The story so far. The trailer for Ragnarok released in September confirms that the game takes place a few years after the events of 2018's God of War. The freezing winds of Fimbulwinter have come to Midgard, making survival for Kratos, Atreus, and Mimir in the Norse wilds even more challenging than before, Sony said in a blog post. While the last game built an enormous amount of trust and understanding between father and son, there is still a great deal of complexity in their interactions, especially after the revelation of Atreus' giant heritage and the hidden prophecy only Kratos saw. In Ragnarok, Atreus is desperately curious, according to Sony. Like most young people, he wants to understand who he is more than anything. In this case, he wants to understand who he could be. The mystery of Loki's role in the upcoming conflict is something that Atreus cannot let go of. He wants to keep his family safe, but Atreus also doesn't want to stand by and do nothing while conflict consumes the 9 realms. As for Kratos, Sony says he is intent on helping to spare Atreus from the bloody lessons he learned from his conflict with gods. He wants to keep his son safe, above all, and their confrontation with Baldur has vindicated the belief that only tragedy will come from further entanglements with the Aesir, reads a line from the game's description. Together, Kratos and Atreus will have to make a choice about which path they will take. Whatever they choose will define the fate of all those living in the Nine Realms as Ragnarok approaches. Concluding the Norse saga. Santa Monica Studios' creative director, Cory Barlog, has confirmed in an interview that Ragnarok will conclude the Norse storyline that started with 2018's God of War on PS4. Barlog explained that the main reason to conclude the Norse saga in God of War Ragnarok was because of the long development time involved in making a modern God of War game. Between the 5 years taken to develop 2018's God of War and the 4 that will be spent on Ragnarok, the studio would rather the Norse storyline didn't run over nearly 15 years through a third game, as it'll be too stretched out. PS4 to PS5 upgrade fee confirmed. After the player outrage surrounding the confusing upgrade process for Horizon Forbidden West, Sony issued a statement detailing how it will allow players to upgrade from the PS4 version to the PS5 version of future titles. It specifically name-checked God of War and said that you'll need to pay a $10 digital fee to get the enhanced PS5 version of the game if you already own the PS4 version. Now that the game's additions have been confirmed, we know that the upgrade fee does indeed apply to God of War Ragnarok.